During the great year of 2015, Tata unveiled their all-new Zika hatchback with hopes of it becoming another landmark product for them. The Zika name itself stood for Zippy Car, and also it was the name of a terrible virus that was in the midst of a global outbreak. Yeah, not a good look for Tata shareholders there, so the company launched an internet competition to find a new name, eventually landing on Tata Tiago. Good for them. In the same vein, just a few years later, with the outbreak of some other virus, Toyota must have been glad that they had discontinued the Toyota Corona years earlier. Every car has a name. Even the Toyota truck and Toyota van have names. Truck and van. These names are often chosen from a short list of different options, and by short here I mean not short. The one that gets selected is usually, well, available and something that the bigwigs at the company like. Back in the mid-80s, for example, Ford executives weren't too keen on the new midsize's original planned name, Ford Sigma. Oh god. So the name was changed to Taurus, as the top two men running the project had wives who were born under the Taurus astrological sign. But okay, you've now chosen a name for your new car, and by you I mean Chevrolet, and by now I mean 1974, because that's when Chevy introduced their all-new 1975 Monza subcompact. Which is odd, because just a few months earlier, journalists had quite confidently reported that the new car would bear the name Chaparral, not Monza. The backstory here is quite simple. The Chaparral name was at the time owned by Jim Hall, the famed racing driver, and his company Chaparral Cars, which was quite closely related to Chevrolet in developing their race cars. Perhaps Chevy wanted to knowingly conjure up images of race cars with the Chaparral name, but couldn't bring themselves to pay Jim Hall and his company royalties for every car they sold. So they went with a different name with a Jim Hall connection. Did you know that I have a connection to Jim Hall? Just like him, I am also a human being. And being a human guarantees one thing. My personal data is floating around on the internet without my approval. I'm talking about things like your home address, phone number, date of birth, or your social security number being available to essentially anyone with internet access. And with that information, it is way too easy to become a victim of identity theft. That is a really, really bad thing. All of this is possible thanks to data brokers. What they do is they take your data and then sell that information to others. That's why your phone number might be on a call list, for example, and that's why you keep getting robocalls. Incogni deals with getting your information off the market. Now, you have the right to do this yourself, but it is a cumbersome and annoyingly difficult process. Just sign up for Incogni and let them do all of the work for you, making sure that scammers and data brokers and entire websites can't hold any of your personal information. To sign up, go to incogni.com/CorsiCar, use the QR code on screen or the code CorsiCar to enjoy a 60% discount off of your first annual plan. Okay, at the 2003 Geneva Motor Show, Fiat took the stage to unveil their successor to the highly successful Panda, the all-new Fiat Gingo. Sounds like a name I shouldn't be allowed to say, but here was a name that the company was confident in, handing out press kits to journalists and merchandise and brochures to showgoers. Here was its website. But then, as it turned out, Renault wasn't very happy with the fact that Fiat's new low-cost city car, the Gingo, had quite a similar name to their French low-cost city car, the Twingo. Renault was absolutely ready to take this matter to court, but for quite a while Fiat wasn't budging. Instead, they paraded the new Gingo around on Renault's home turf at the Tour de France that summer. Renault must have been counting up its lawyers already when, just a month before going on sale, Fiat finally decided to give up the Gingo name, resorting to making it the second-generation Panda instead. which is basically what it always was regardless. But knowing how much Italians hate direct name lineages, this must have been a painful moment for them. Now, you may have noticed something a little similar happened with Alfa Romeo a little more recently in 2024. The Alfa Romeo Milano is what the company wanted to sell their new crossover as, but the Italian government stepped in telling them you can't sell something with an Italian name that isn't built in Italy. So what they did was they dug out another name from Alfa's back catalog and called it Junior instead. But the funny thing here is that in the last 20 years, Alfa Romeo has previously attempted to use both the Junior and Milano names on different models. Back in 2007, Alfa Romeo was now the one to hold an online competition to name its new subcompact, which up until then had been known as the Junior and was lovingly called so by the motoring press. But instead of being christened Junior, 12 other names were put forward for people to vote on, with Furiosa eventually being the winning option. So that was to be Alfa's new hatchback, until it was brought up that Furiosa in Spanish meant an angry woman. As Alfa Romeo were not only targeting angry women as customers, but angry men as well, it was quite quickly decided to scrap the Furiosa name altogether, and indeed scrap any other name that had been voted on, as the car would eventually bear the name Mito.
It's called a Mito, M-I-T-O, because it was designed in Milan and built in Torino, Turin. Well, I'm thinking, what if they designed it in Twickenham and built it in Attercliffe?
Then, a few years later, Alfa was ready to launch their new C-segment hatch. Not as an Alfa Romeo 149 as was first suspected, but instead as the Alfa Milano. Again, press materials had already been handed out to journalists before the company had a change of heart regarding the name and quickly swapped it out for Giulietta. The reason being, it was perhaps seen as a bit insensitive naming the car after the beautiful city of Milan, just as Alfa Romeo were shutting business down in the place, firing a few people along the way and relocating others to Turin. Perhaps that was the reason. But aside from the Panda and Alfa Junior, these cars we've talked about got their names swapped out before we, the public, got to see them under their dead names. Which is kind of boring. It's always more exciting when an automaker is fully confident enough in their new car to reveal it, only for them to then decide to change their mind. For example, Subaru unveiled the B9X in 2005, and of all the things they could have changed about it, they decided to change the name. Toyota's 2018 Auris hatchback and wagon were revealed as the Auris until Toyota decided that the Corolla nameplate was popular again and the pair became Corolla models again. And then a few years later they removed a space between the GR and 86, and yet somehow Time magazine or New York Times did not report on it.